Recently, my wife had frequent nausea, so I took her to my friend's newly opened traditional Western medicine clinic for a checkup. After examining her pulse, my friend told us not to overwork ourselves lately. Afterwards, he arranged to meet me alone and asked if I had changed my mind about being child-free. I told him no, that I hadn't planned on having children, mainly because Vicky had been injured 10 years ago, leaving her unable to conceive for life. For her sake, I voluntarily underwent a vasectomy. The scar is still there today. The moment my friend told me Vicky was pregnant, I felt as if I'd been struck by lightning at first. I thought it was a misdiagnosis. It wasn't until I stumbled upon a sweet family photo of 4 on her social media abroad that I truly realized I had been betrayed. I kept scrolling through my wife's selfies on Twitter. Out of hundreds of photos, nearly half were taken with another man. The account registration date was 7 years ago. By 6 years ago, 2 new members began appearing in the albums. They were a pair of twins, a boy and a girl about 5 years old. Both the boy and the girl looked very much like the man in the photos. The last family photo was 3 months ago. I clearly remembered she had told me she was going abroad for an important project training. Upon her return, she started feeling unwell. To prevent outsiders from judging her, I had been willing to go to the hospital myself for the procedure. But she had 2 children abroad? No, counting the one in her belly, she was the mother of 3? I let out a bitter laugh, feeling like a complete fool who had been led in circles. My wife's Twitter suddenly updated. In the photo, she was gently stroking her belly, smiling very happily. She captioned it with an English phrase, "eternal happiness." So, she had known she was pregnant for a while. Rage instantly spread through my chest, and a vein on my forehead pulsed wildly. Picking up my phone, I dialed her number. "Don't you know I'm in a meeting? Can't this wait?" I didn't even get a chance to speak before the call was hung up. In the past, no matter how important the meeting, she would have asked me why I was calling. But that past was 10 years ago. After graduating from university, I turned down an executive offer from a Fortune 500 company. Unhesitatingly, I took Victoria Montgomery's hand and chose to become a live-in son-in-law in the Montgomery family. I stayed by her side as she grew the Montgomery family's initial business worth millions into billions today. Thinking about it now, was it really worth it? I dialed the number again and Victoria Montgomery's impatient voice came through. "Sincere Miller, are you insane? I told you I'm in a meeting where? Sarah didn't say you had a meeting today." Victoria Montgomery was silent for a moment, then replied frostily, "At Dragon Rise headquarters. Any other questions? Please ask them all at once." Before I could finish, the call was cut off again. Looking at the photo of her and me on the screen, I knew this relationship might never go back to how it was. Arriving at Dragon Rise headquarters, I coincidentally saw my wife's Porsche. Besides her, there was a familiar face in the car, the man from the photos. He was immaculately dressed in a suit, looked handsome and sunny, and seemed younger than me. The 2 of them were being affectionate in the car, lingering for quite a while before parting. I hid in a corner, heartbroken, wanting to rush over several times but stopping myself, because I knew doing so would be meaningless. I could only resolve our relationship issues through calm conversation. I pretended I hadn't seen anything, knocked and walked into the office. Victoria Montgomery smiled sweetly at me. "You actually came?" "Sorry about that. The meeting just now was really important. That's why I was a bit harsh with you." "It's fine. Just do your thing." Normally, seeing her crescent moon-shaped eyes would make me lose all resistance. No matter what we argued about, I would always be the first to surrender. Seeing that my attitude was off, Victoria Montgomery frowned and asked, "I've apologized to you. Aren't you being too petty? I doubt there's any man generous enough to allow his wife to have another man outside, is there?" I laid the matter bare, but she chose not to admit it. She stroked my cheek and asked, "Sincere, have you heard some gossip? You have to believe me, I'm devoted only to you." I wanted to laugh, feeling incredibly helpless. If I hadn't had solid evidence, I might have actually fallen for her string of lies. So I took out my phone, quietly opened the photos, and placed it on the desk. I calmly asked her, "Is there anything else you want to say now?" I'm listening. The panicked expression I had expected didn't appear. Victoria Montgomery looked very composed. She glanced at the photos and explained, "Oh, I was planning to tell you in a few days. I didn't expect you to find out already." "Tell me what? Tell me you have another man outside and even have children with him?" 10 years, that scar is still there. I was willing to sacrifice everything for her, yet she seemed to think she hadn't done anything wrong. Victoria Montgomery continued, "I did all this for our future, so you're blaming me, is that right? For us?" I almost burst out laughing, and at the same time, I was stunned by her reply. I couldn't have imagined such an answer. Yes, his name is Julian Faker, the Asia-Pacific CEO of Sovereign Group. We met 7 years ago. At that time, to cooperate with Sovereign, I had to get past him. What's wrong with sacrificing personal matters for profit? If I hadn't signed the contract with Sovereign, the company probably would have collapsed long ago. Sovereign Group? I stared at Victoria Montgomery suspiciously. Just as I was about to speak, she forcefully interrupted. Anyway, since I couldn't have children, I agreed to spend a night with him. Maybe he was sent by fate to favor me. I actually got pregnant with a pair of twins. I saw Victoria Montgomery's look of surprise, but my heart was bleeding. I couldn't fathom how she could tell me such a thing so casually. The boy is named Leo and the girl is named Lucy. They're really well behaved and sensible. In the future, I'll change their surname to Montgomery, and then they'll be our children. That word "our" sounded so ridiculous. You had a man outside, had children with him, and now you want me to raise them, is that right? I didn't know if my understanding was correct. But didn't everything she said mean she wanted me to continue staying with her and raising the children? So, in your eyes, what exactly am I? Seeing my tone intensify, Victoria Montgomery began to patiently comfort me. "Sincere, I know it's hard for you to accept right away, but it's okay. I can wait for you until you do." Ha ha. Do you think I will accept this? It was only at this moment that I realized how utterly pathetic my life had become. Everything I had done for her had turned into a joke. Perhaps she was fearless because of her confidence in my love. Forget it, let it be this way. I picked up my phone and replied indifferently, "No need, I'm not worthy." Victoria Montgomery suddenly became furious out of embarrassment. "Are you done making a scene? Or do you think Juju can replace your position in my heart?" Juju, what an intimate nickname. For 10 years I had poured so much effort into her family, into the company. It turned out she didn't see any of it. I nodded and smiled bitterly. Fine, whatever. Anyway, none of this has anything to do with me anymore. Let's get a divorce. Since we met, not once during an argument had I mentioned breaking up or divorce. I considered myself relatively rational and didn't want to joke about such things. This was the first time I had the thought of separating, and my heart felt like it was being tightly gripped. Maybe I had suddenly become very childish. I knew that if I could see even a hint of regret on Victoria Montgomery's face, she still loved me. But I didn't expect Victoria Montgomery to just stare blankly for 2 seconds, then sneer at me. "Divorce? Don't be ridiculous. How would you survive without me? Back then, if my family hadn't agreed to let you be a live-in son-in-law, you'd probably still be sweeping the streets, wouldn't you?" This was her go-to tactic whenever we argued. Using my status as a live-in son-in-law, she would demean my abilities in various ways. In the past, I would indeed feel inferior, but this time was different. Whatever. Even if I sweep the streets, it will have nothing to do with you. Sincere Miller. Victoria Montgomery glared at me furiously, drawing glances from the employees outside the office. Within the company, apart from the R&D team I led, everyone else looked at me strangely. After all, the term live-in son-in-law was quite harsh, like a kept man who only relies on his wife. I had gotten used to it, thinking I should endure it for the sake of my wife. Now I knew that constant yielding only led to the other person escalating their behavior. She suddenly changed her attitude. Her eyes looking at me softened considerably. "Sincere, I know it's hard for you to accept, but believe me, it will only be you and me in the future. There won't be any other man." I didn't know what her relationship with Julian Faker truly was. but I wasn't an idiot. Seeing their intimacy in the car downstairs, I should have known it was definitely not casual. The woman in front of me was practically gazing longingly at that man just moments ago. Their reluctance to part, their affectionate looks when he left, were they all just an act? I need to go home and cool down first. Just like that, I left under the employee's gloating eyes. Back home, I took out beer and sat on the balcony, trying to drown my sorrows. I don't know when I fell asleep. Dimly, I felt someone covering me with a blanket. When I woke up again, Victoria Montgomery was smiling at me. "You're awake? I usually see you abstain from alcohol, but this time you drank so much in one go. Here, I specially bought this hangover remedy for you." I was actually a little disoriented, as if the Vicky from 10 years ago had returned to my side. Seeing the apron she was wearing, I was surprised. I instinctively glanced towards the kitchen. Hearing movement from there, I realized she was actually making soup, and the scattered seasonings on the stovetop proved that she had indeed cooked it herself. For 10 years she had never cooked a meal herself. Because she had poor self-care skills, I had always been the one looking after her every need, taking meticulous care of her, cherishing her as my beloved. Just as I was hesitating, her phone suddenly rang. Seeing the caller ID, she answered with surprise. "Oh, you're already here? Wait a moment, I'll open the door right away." I suddenly had a bad feeling. Before I could ask, the doorbell rang. The man from the photos stood at the door, holding the hands of their 2 children. Seeing Victoria Montgomery, the twins immediately rushed forward, calling "Mommy, Mommy" non-stop. Their childish voices melted Victoria Montgomery's heart. She quickly took off her apron, scooped Lucy into her arms, and took Leo's hand. Julian Faker smiled gently. Mr. and Mrs. Faker were really sad to hear they were leaving. "Oh, what can we do? Maybe I should buy more gifts to take next time." "Aha, no need. They're quite understanding. Their conversation and actions. To anyone looking, they seemed like a loving couple." Meanwhile, I sat blankly on the balcony, more like an outsider. I couldn't believe Victoria Montgomery would openly bring them home. And bring them before me to introduce them. "Sincere, this is Julian Faker I told you about. This is Leo and this is Lucy." Victoria Montgomery motioned for the children to call me Daddy. She mainly wanted me to get used to it, to slowly accept them. Unexpectedly, the boy said with a face full of resistance, "No way, he's not Daddy. He's the big bad guy who stole Mommy." After speaking, he kicked me. Although it didn't hurt, it made me extremely embarrassed. The girl started crying loudly with a wah sound. "Mommy, don't you love us anymore?" For the first time, I saw helplessness on Victoria Montgomery's face. She crouched down and explained to the twins, "No, how could you think that? Mommy loves you the most. Then why do you want us to call him Daddy?" I don't want to. Perhaps Victoria Montgomery had reserved all her tenderness for these 2 children. Unable to bear their crying and fussing, she yelled at me, "Can't you see the children don't like you? Get out quickly, you're not welcome here." At first, I thought I had misheard. This was my home too, and the woman in front of me was telling me to leave, and for the sake of 2 children who were unrelated to me. Seeing Victoria Montgomery side with them, the twins looked at me even more shamelessly. It was as if they saw me as the third party destroying their parents' relationship. They started yelling, demanding that I be kicked out of the house. They even said I was never allowed to come back in. I stared blankly at Victoria Montgomery, wanting to know if she was serious about what she just said. She frowned and looked at me with displeasure. "What are you standing there for? Get out of here quickly." I understood. It seemed she genuinely wanted me out of this house. But when I looked at Julian Faker standing nearby and saw the smug smile on his face, a burning anger of resentment surged through my chest. 10 years of dedication and sacrifice couldn't compare to the 2 children brought by the man from outside. Was my life really so tragic? The words on the tip of my tongue were swallowed back down. I nodded helplessly and replied, "Okay, I'll go," because I knew saying anything more would be meaningless. I might as well just leave. Just as I stood up, the boy kicked me again. Then he put his hands on his hips and laughed at me. The girl cheered, "Yay, the bad guy is defeated. We won. Mommy and Daddy will never be apart." Victoria Montgomery ignored me, not even sparing me another glance. She patted the children's little heads and said with a smile, "That's right, the bad guy lost, and justice prevails." As I reached the door, I could still hear Victoria Montgomery and Julian Faker's conversation. "Quick, clean up a bit. I made soup for you and the children. Try it and see how it tastes. Anything you make by hand is a delicacy." "Bitch, don't be so sappy. Even if it doesn't taste good, you'll have to bear with it. From now on, you're my personal taster." I quietly closed the door and left the villa I had bought with my savings. It no longer belonged to me. I had to find a random hotel to stay for the night and go to work as usual the next day. I saw many employees pointing at me and looking at me strangely. It wasn't until I got to the office that I realized it no longer belonged to me. My belongings had been moved out, and only 2 potted plants remained. "You're here just in time. I have something to tell you." Victoria Montgomery's voice sounded behind me. She called me into the office and said indifferently, "From now on, this office belongs to Julian Faker." "What about me?" I asked, frowning. "Originally, I wanted to transfer you to another department, but Heron couldn't bear to. He wants you to stay by his side as an assistant." Correction. Heron is Julian Faker. "Originally, I wanted to transfer you to another department, but Juju couldn't bear to. He wants you to stay by his side as an assistant." Upon learning I was to be that man's assistant, the pent-up anger inside me finally erupted. Why should I? What is he even? Does he think he's worthy of me being his assistant? I had never lost my temper so much before, at least never in front of her, showing this kind of behavior. It made her feel like she didn't know me, causing her to question me. "Sincere Miller, have you lost your mind? How dare you question Juju? All right, you say he's the Asia Pacific CEO of Sovereign Group. Then what is he doing at our company? Or do you think he's condescending to come here to help you achieve your dream of being a Fortune 500 company? This had once been our biggest dream together. We motivated each other, never stopping. Victoria Montgomery, however, turned it back on me. Isn't that right? You can learn a lot by being his assistant. You should feel honored." "Learn what?" "How to scam people." The Asia Pacific CEO of Sovereign Group was indeed named Alan Young. That was correct. And I knew him. He was my former junior high classmate. We grew up together and had a good relationship. Yet the woman in front of me was so naive that she thought she could secure the cooperation just by sleeping with him. Moreover, the person she slept with wasn't the Alan Young I knew at all. Please don't be so biased against Juju. When you get to know him, you'll find he has a lot of charm. It seems you've been completely deceived. He's actually... Before I could finish, there was a knock on the office door. Julian Faker came in and smiled at Victoria Montgomery. "Vicky, I don't like to force people. Since Sincere doesn't like it, forget it. Are we close?" I really disliked him calling me that. It made me feel uncomfortable all over. "How dare you talk to Juju like that?" Apologize immediately, seeing Victoria Montgomery acting as if she were possessed. I sighed lightly and replied, "Forget it. Just transfer me to any department. How about the security department?" Just as I was about to leave, I heard Julian Faker ask me with a seemingly playful smile. Then he joked, "Haha, sorry, I'm just kidding, don't take it seriously." Victoria Montgomery, however, took him seriously. "The security department is fine too. Maybe that will make him realize his mistake." "That's right. It'll be good training. Don't always think you're so important." Julian Faker stopped pretending and started being sarcastic. My choice was simple. I asked Victoria Montgomery, "Are you sure you want to transfer me to the security department for his sake? Do you still not think you've made a mistake?" "All right, suppose I'm mistaken. I quit." There was no way I would be Julian Faker's assistant, and being a security guard was even more absurd. If word got out, wouldn't I become the biggest joke in the investment world? So I turned around and walked out confidently in front of Victoria Montgomery. From that moment on, I had no more ties to her. I also called the real Alan Young. I told him I had left Dragon Rise, The real Alan Young seemed quite calm when he heard I had left Dragon Rise. He told me he had guessed all along that Victoria Montgomery and I weren't meant to be together. I had heard these words from him years ago when I went to Sovereign Group to visit him. At the time, I didn't pay much attention to it, even thinking he was jealous of my good wife. Thinking back now, I was too naive. After all, he was an experienced ladies' man, frequenting the social scene. He truly had a clearer understanding of people than I did. He didn't say much, just asked me 5 words. "Were you wronged?" I smiled bitterly. "No, I just feel like it wasn't worth it. There are plenty of fish in the sea, no need to fixate on one person. Next time you're in Singapore, I'll treat you to good food and drinks. All right, it's a promise." All these years, Alan Young had never given up on trying to recruit me to his company. Although his invitations were always subtle, I could sense them, so my response to him was always a polite refusal. I didn't want to let down Victoria Montgomery's expectations of me. Thinking about it now, it had all become a fleeting memory. In the evening, I called Victoria Montgomery, planning to discuss coming home to pack my luggage. Unexpectedly, the imposter Julian Faker answered the phone. "Sincere, are you looking for Vicky? Where is she? She's cooking. You can tell me if there's anything." Finding out Victoria Montgomery was actually cooking made my heart even more bitter. In the past, I had fantasized many times about eating food cooked by Vicky. Even just a simple bowl of instant noodles would have touched me to tears, right? Unfortunately, I waited for 10 years. What I waited for wasn't instant noodles, but her betrayal. Ask her to find some time. "I'll come back to pack my things. Now is fine. Vicky has already packed your things for you. You can come over and have a meal before you go." "Vicky has already packed your things for you. Why don't you come over for a meal before you go?" "No need for dinner. I'll just grab my things and leave." I didn't expect Victoria Montgomery to act so quickly. But none of it mattered anymore. I just wanted to get my things and say goodbye to this city as soon as possible. When I arrived, I habitually took out my key to open the door, only to walk into the living room and find the 2 of them intertwined on the sofa, their clothes disheveled, consumed by passion. There was a faint blush on Victoria Montgomery's cheeks. She looked soft and yielding, a sight I had never seen before. Seeing me return, she was startled and quickly scrambled off the sofa, questioning me. "Sincere Miller, why didn't you give us a heads up before coming back?" I looked at Julian Faker, who was lowering his head and buttoning his shirt. It dawned on me. This was all prearranged by him. What was his purpose? Was it just to disgust me? The old me might have been so angry I would have fainted on the spot. But now I had let go long ago and felt calmer than I expected. "Sorry for interrupting your good time. I'll just get my luggage and leave." Victoria Montgomery quickly dressed and urgently explained to me, "Sincere, I told you the reason for everything. You'll understand me, right?" I grinned. "Of course. I wish you a lifetime of happiness together, forever hand in hand." Victoria Montgomery thought I was still sulking and glared at me coyly. "How long are you going to keep this up? Both Juju and I have our hardships. Can't you just calm down?" "So, only you 2 are allowed to have hardships and I just have to bottle everything up?" After letting go, I realized how utterly shocking Victoria Montgomery's worldview was. First, she used manipulative tactics, then she betrayed me. And now she could turn around and act like I was the one being unreasonable? I really had nothing left to say to her. I asked Julian Faker, "Since your goal has been achieved, give me my luggage." Victoria Montgomery looked at Julian Faker suspiciously. "What goal? What luggage?" Julian Faker explained. "Sincere called asking to pack his luggage, so I advised him to come talk to you again." I didn't expect him to curse at me over the phone and even threaten to kill me. Now I truly understood what it meant to make things up as you go along. The ridiculous thing was, Victoria Montgomery believed him unconditionally. She thought I had gone too far in this matter and shouldn't have threatened Julian Faker. "I don't want to play house with you anymore. Once I pack my luggage, I'm leaving." Victoria Montgomery pointed towards the bedroom. "Fine, go pack. If you dare to leave with that luggage, I'll consider you dead to me." Without hesitation, I took out my suitcase. I packed everything I needed and left behind everything useless. Before leaving, I reminded her, as for our shared belongings, please dispose of them for me. I'm in a hurry. The real Alan Young had booked my flight to Singapore. Boarding would start in less than 3 hours. Are you really abandoning this? Even at this point, Victoria Montgomery could act so confident and fearless. So I admit I had indeed spoiled her for the past 10 years. But I could also cut off this relationship at any time. I left without looking back, leaving her staring, stunned. The imposter Julian Faker seized the moment to comfort her. Don't worry, Vicky. He'll understand eventually. After leaving the villa, the first thing I did was delete every memory I had with Victoria Montgomery, including her contact information, social media accounts, and call history. Then I got a new phone number, deciding to start over. 3 days later, Victoria Montgomery was frustrated and angry because I hadn't come to find her. She called my number and found it was turned off. When she sent messages, she saw she was blocked on all social media. Gradually, she finally sensed that something was wrong. Thinking about where to find me, her thoughts were interrupted by her assistant, Sarah Davis, knocking on the door. Miss Montgomery, someone from Sovereign Group is here and says they want to see you. Victoria Montgomery's beautiful eyes widened. She asked curiously, Sovereign Group? Looking for me? Did they say why they're here? Sarah Davis shook her head. No, they just specifically asked to see you. What was their attitude, and how did they seem? They looked not very optimistic. Realizing something was amiss, Victoria Montgomery immediately called Julian Faker. She instructed him to come to her office. In her view, since the visitors were from Sovereign Group, no matter which region they were from, Julian Faker's former status would mean they had some connection. In the office, Victoria Montgomery invited the people from Sovereign Group to sit down. She motioned for Sarah Davis to make tea and sincerely asked, May I know, sir, how should I address you? The visitor was a middle-aged man in his early 50s, smartly dressed in a suit. Robert Baker, Executive Vice President of Sovereign Group, Asia Pacific. Executive Vice President, Asia Pacific? Victoria Montgomery took the business card and noticed it was not the same as Julian Faker's. However, she didn't think much of it and said warmly, Ah, Mr. Baker, what a pleasure it is that you've taken the time out of your busy schedule to visit our company. Surely you're not here to recruit Julian Faker back, are you? Robert Baker looked puzzled. Mr. Young has always held the position of CEO within the company. Why would I recruit him back? Mr. Baker, you're truly humorous. Weren't you aware that Julian Faker already resigned? Julian Faker opened the door and asked, Vicky, why did you call me here in such a hurry? Is something wrong? He saw Robert Baker but appeared very calm. So calm it was like he didn't know him at all. Victoria Montgomery, on the other hand, asked in surprise, Juju, don't you know who this is? And this is? Julian Faker carefully observed Robert Baker. He's the Executive Vice President of Sovereign Group, Asia Pacific. How could you not know him? Perhaps Mr. Baker was recently appointed. Robert Baker looked Julian Faker up and down, his eyes full of disdain, and Julian Faker's face gradually turned contorted. Ms. Montgomery, I'm here today to terminate all business relations with your esteemed company. Terminate? Why? Just because Juju left Sovereign. Dragon Rise's biggest turning point had been its cooperation with Sovereign Group. It had transformed the company, increasing its market value more than tenfold. Sovereign Group was still their largest partner. There was no way they would just break it off. So Victoria Montgomery became agitated and pressed further. If there's anything you're dissatisfied with regarding us, please tell us. Robert Baker smiled and waved his hand. It's not a problem with the cooperation itself. Then what is it because of? As the two spoke, cold sweat was already beading on Julian Faker's forehead. He suddenly mustered his courage and cursed, Almost fell for your trick, you imposter, Vicky. He's fake. He's not the Asia-Pacific Vice President of Sovereign Group at all. Victoria Montgomery felt the same way. Otherwise, how could they not know each other when they were supposed to be superior and subordinate? Moreover, the cooperation between Sovereign and Dragon Rise had always been stable. It couldn't just be cut off like that. I haven't even said anything about you yet, and you're already making false accusations. Robert Baker took a slow sip of his tea. Then he took out a contract, handed it to Victoria Montgomery, and said, "This is Mr. Young's decision. He also asked me to relay a message to you." "What message?" "He said that cooperating with you is too risky, and you have very poor judgment in people." Victoria Montgomery sneered. "Are you done pretending? If you don't leave now, don't blame me for calling the police and reporting you for fraud. Ms. Montgomery, you don't actually believe he's our Asia-Pacific CEO, do you?" Robert Baker opened his phone and pulled up a photo of the real Alan Young. "If you don't trust me, photos and news won't lie." Besides the photo of the real Alan Young, there was also an official interview with him as the Sovereign Group Asia-Pacific CEO by legitimate media outlets. Whether it was the employee photo or the photo from the interview, they were enough to confirm that the Julian faker standing beside her was indeed fake. "Vicky, The imposter Julian faker still wanted to explain, but Victoria Montgomery didn't give him a chance. She started muttering to herself, "Impossible. Could there be a mistake somewhere?" She had also investigated Julian faker online back then and believed what she found. Could the information have been faked beforehand? How could Victoria Montgomery accept this cruel reality? From the first time she slept with him, to getting pregnant, and now the third child. All her actions were aimed at solidifying the cooperation with Sovereign Group. Because she believed Julian Faker was the Prince Charming of the Asia-Pacific region. Even if he had left to come to Dragon Rise, she thought it was a gain. She suddenly glared fiercely at the imposter Julian Faker, her eyes looking like they wanted to devour him. "Who exactly are you? He's just social garbage who goes around scamming people. Because he's incorrigible, he's been brought into the police station 3 or 4 times and even served 2 years in prison." Robert Baker's explanation nearly made Victoria Montgomery collapse. Not only was he an imposter, but he was also a repeat offender. "I was actually tricked by such a worthless person for 6 whole years?" Victoria Montgomery asked uncertainly. "No, wait. Why were you willing to cooperate the moment I met him back then?" "Well, that brings us back to Miss Montgomery's judgment. You clearly had a capable person right beside you and let him go." "Who?" "Mr. Miller. The only high-ranking executive named Miller in the company was me." However, Victoria Montgomery refused to believe that the person who secured the Sovereign Group Asia-Pacific business was me. She had always believed she achieved it through her own efforts and sacrifices. And using this success, she had completely stepped on me and looked down on me, calling me useless, saying I was worthless, and using various manipulative tactics. "Are you talking about Sincere Miller?" Victoria Montgomery asked, still in disbelief. Seeing Robert Baker nod, the last thread of hope snapped. She didn't throw a fit or kick people out, but stared blankly ahead. She couldn't bear to think what she had done these past few days. Then she frantically pulled out her phone to call me, desperate to know the truth, but my number wouldn't go through. So she used a different phone and dialed again. This time it connected, and she was extremely agitated. Just as she was about to speak, an unfamiliar male voice answered. "May I ask who this is?" Victoria Montgomery immediately asked, "Where's Sincere? Where is Sincere Miller? Could you please let him take the call? Just tell him I'm Vicky, and I have something important to say to him in person." The voice on the other end replied, "Sorry, this is a new number I just got today. I don't know anyone named Sincere Miller." "That's impossible, Before Victoria Montgomery could finish, the call was hung up. She became utterly panicked. She couldn't fathom that she had given up a 10-year relationship for a scumbag, given up a man who could tolerate all her mistakes, who was always understanding and went along with everything she did, who was even willing to bear all the negative labels outside for her sake. Robert Baker smiled nonchalantly. "It seems Miss Montgomery is also a victim. Well, that explains it. However, what's done is done. There's nothing to salvage now. Please take care of yourself in the future." Victoria Montgomery had no reaction until Robert Baker stood up and left the office. "Vicky, you can't be so willful. You need to think more about our children. They are innocent." Julian Faker tried to use the children as a shield. This was the retreat he had planned all along, thinking he could gain forgiveness. Victoria Montgomery suddenly had red eyes and a distorted face as she lunged at his neck, continuously shouting, "Give Sincere back to me, or I'll choke you to death as promised." I arrived in Singapore, where the real Alan Young was. As soon as I exited the gate, I saw him personally there to greet me. He then arranged for me to stay at the best 5-star hotel. During the ride, he smiled and asked if I was interested in Sovereign Group. This was one of countless invitations he had extended over the years. He was prepared for me to refuse again, but I hesitated for a moment. I told him I wanted to rest for a while first. Without a word, he readily agreed and offered to take leave to personally be my tour guide. A week passed in the blink of an eye, and I was touched by Alan Young's sincerity. Ultimately, I decided to join Sovereign Group. Meanwhile, back in the States, Victoria Montgomery was desperately searching for information about my whereabouts. She would return home and do nothing but stare at her phone. The imposter Julian Faker was sent to the police station and held there by her. The 2 children cried and fussed because they couldn't see their father, and Victoria Montgomery pretended not to hear them. When she finally got frustrated, she would yell at them. The children cried even harder, and she would then send them to her parents' place to be looked after. After all, seeing them made her regret everything she had done. The day before the trial, she firmly decided to have the baby in her belly aborted. She didn't want to be heavily pregnant if she ever saw me again. She also spent a large sum of money to hire the best lawyer. She successfully secured a 20-year prison sentence for the imposter Julian Faker under multiple charges. 2 years passed quickly, and under her leadership, Dragon Rise entered an irreversible decline. When the market value of billions was decimated back to its original state, she finally realized that the company's true backbone all these years had been me. But my focus was no longer on that. She wanted to see me, to admit her mistakes. It wasn't until some time later that someone told her they thought they had seen me at Sovereign Group in Singapore. Without a second thought, she immediately bought a ticket for the same day and flew to find me. Even if it wasn't true, even if the hope was dashed, she didn't want to miss any opportunity. Finally, she found me in the lounge area of Sovereign Group. She looked much more haggard compared to 2 years ago. Ignoring everyone else, she immediately rushed towards me, wanting to jump into my embrace as she used to. I stepped aside, frowned, and asked, "What do you want?" "Sincere, it's me. I'm Vicky." Victoria Montgomery had never expected me to reject her, thinking we could go back to the way things were. "I've been looking for you for 2 years. Are you still not going to forgive me?" Just then, another female voice echoed in the lounge. "Sincere, who is this?" The owner of the voice was beautiful, and her professional attire showcased her figure perfectly. She was dignified, elegant, and possessed outstanding temperament. Victoria Montgomery couldn't help but feel a sense of inferiority when she saw her. "Who are you?" The woman replied without hesitation. "I'm his partner." This word partner made Victoria Montgomery feel incredibly incredulous. With red-rimmed eyes, she asked disbelievingly, "That's not true. Tell me this isn't real, right?" I hadn't realized my secretary was so perceptive, so I naturally put my arm around her waist. "From the day I left 2 years ago, there has been nothing between us anymore." Just as I was about to leave, Victoria Montgomery suddenly knelt before me in front of many people. She even hugged my leg, pleading desperately for me not to go. Seeing this behavior, I only felt disgusted. Shaking her off, I lowered my voice. "If you dare make a scene again, don't blame me for calling security to escort you out knowing my mind was made up," Victoria Montgomery cried all night. Finally, she quietly left Singapore. After returning, she sold the company at a heavily discounted price and donated all the money. Unhesitatingly, she chose to commit suicide at the place where we first met and fell in love. By the time I learned of this, it was already 2 years later. My secretary back then had become my true partner, and I had undergone surgery to regain my fertility, having our first child with her. As for the past, let it fade away with the wind.